Hello, Whiskey 9 Tango Victor X-Ray here today, and we're going to talk about connecting the Elecraft K3S to the SPE Expert 1.3K-FA linear amplifier. Specifically what we're going to talk about is connecting both a PC and the SPE amplifier to the K3S, such that both the amplifier and the PC will get CAT data and frequency data. Now, prior to this K3S, I was running a TS990, and that radio has two ports, I/O ports on the back, a USB port and a DE9 port. And I used to use a USB port to communicate with the PC, and the DE9 port I would use to control my linear amplifier. I recently purchased this K3S, and it also has a USB port on the back as well as a DE9 connector. Specifically, it has an RJ45 connector, but you can get a cable that is RJ45 to DE9. And so you can then use that obviously to connect peripherals. Now the problem with this is that on the K3S, only one of those ports can be active. And I spoke with Elecraft, and the issue is that the microcontroller on the radio only has one channel for serial communication. The good news, however, is that while only one channel can exchange, transmit, and receive CAT information, the CAT information is also broadcast on both ports. So that means if I have the serial I/O going to the USB port, I can still get CAT data on the DE9 or RJ45 port. Okay, so the way we'll demonstrate this is, first of all, I'll talk about what I had to do as far as physical hardware goes, and then we'll talk about configuration. Now, first thing I needed to do was build a cable that would connect the SPE amp to the radio. And excuse me, I should say excuse me for the videography. I'm doing this on my camera phone, so you have to excuse if it just jumps around a little bit. I'm just holding it, but hopefully it's a good enough quality that it will get the point across. So anyway, the first thing I did was create a cable that took pin 2 from the radio, that's the RXD in, which is data to the PC, and I connected that to pin 1 on the SPE's CAT input. And then the only other pin that needed to be connected was pin 5 from the radio, which is ground, to pin 4 on the CAT input on the SPE amp. So once I had that set up and connected to the RJ45 to DE9 cable, and I think the part number of that is E980297, the Elecraft part number. Once I had that put together, I basically made the physical connections, and then we had to move on to setting up the hardware. Oh, sorry, the software. So first thing is under the config menu on the radio, and I'm going to go there. What I did was, what you want to have is your, let's see, our RS-232 set to USB, and that will be connected to the computer. And so what we have here is Ham Radio Deluxe running, and as you can see, let me get out of the config menu here. As I change frequencies, as you would expect, Ham Radio Deluxe, and you can use any other software will track the radio. Now, what we also want to do is we want to have our SPE amp here do the same thing. And this is actually important, because if your amp has a built-in antenna tuner in it, what it can do is, if it follows the frequency from the radio, the antenna tuner can pick the optimal settings from a lookup table, so that essentially the amp is always in tune, and you can essentially operate it hands-free. And setting up that lookup table is part of the amplifier setup procedure, and is more detailed in the manual. What I have also here running is the Term 2K, which is SPE's remoting utility. Essentially what it does is the amp has a USB port that will connect to your PC, and this is basically a representation of the front panel, and the front panel controls are right there on the amplifier. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to click this set, and we're going to go to manual tune so that you can see that the amplifier and the radio are both tracking right there, both tracking the same frequencies. So as I change the frequency on the radio using the VFO dial, you can see ham radio deluxe and the linear amp following. Now what you'll also notice is, or you may have noticed, is how the frequency flashes to 0 for maybe a couple hundred milliseconds. The reason it's doing this is that HRD, or ham radio deluxe, will poll the radio every 200 milliseconds. And what's happening is during that poll, I believe the signals dropping on that cable that goes from the radio to the amp, and so we're getting this dropping down to 0 and then back to the frequency when the poll's complete. That's not really an issue. It's not going to really affect your operation, and you can dial down the polling. I think the quickest you can go with HRD is 100 milliseconds. I have mine set to 200 milliseconds. Now, another point to keep in mind is that, and I'll go into the CAT setup for the amplifier. Okay. So what you'll notice is that I actually have it set to a Kenwood radio. Interesting thing is if I set it to Elecraft, which you would expect, I'm going to hit set there, and the baud rate is 38400, as you would expect. And we'll go to the manual tune again. For some reason, what you'll notice is we're seeing 14 kilohertz instead of 14 megahertz. I don't know why, but someone smarter than I can probably figure that out. So we'll go back to the CAT setup. We'll go to Kenwood, set it. Again, 38400 is the baud rate you want, assuming you've set that up for your serial port, and I would assume you would. And we'll just keep it on manual tune so you can see what's going on there. Okay, so basically there you have it. That's the setup to use both serial ports on the back of the K3S, using one to control your SPE amplifier, and I'm assuming this will work with the 1K and the 2K, but specifically this will work for the 1.3, and also having a PC connected to the USB port. Hope you found this useful. You can see a little bit more about my station setup at w9tvx.com. Thank you.